Dear students, dear teachers, good evening everyone. Welcome everyone to attend the academic exchange lecture hosted by Peking University's School of Education, presented by Khenpo Sodargye, titled The Growth and Perfection of Life. Higher education has always been an important field of academic research in our School of Education, and the development of university students is also a focal point of our attention. Especially in our country, after the expansion of higher education enrollment, the enhancement of educational quality faces many changes and new trends within the education system, such as the trend towards student body diversification, inadequate teaching investment by faculty, contradictions between professional education and holistic cultivation, and challenges such as increasing employment pressure, as well as complex social transformations outside the education system. As education researchers or future practitioners in the field of education, we have an even more urgent need to understand the patterns of physical and mental development of Chinese university students. When individuals' physical and mental well-being develop in more positive ways, our nation and society will also become more stable and harmonious. Many of us here are students currently attending university. For the sake of our own positive development in the future, we also need to understand some patterns of university students' physical and mental development. However, at present, research in the field of Chinese university student development is mostly based on Western psychological theories. To deeply explore localized theories of student development and understand how traditional Chinese culture views the growth and perfection of life, such as approaches to self-development, what differences exist between our models and Western models, these are all very important academic questions we currently face. We are very honored that today we have invited Khenpo Sodargye to explain to us how Buddhism views the growth and perfection of individual life. Khenpo is profoundly learned and deeply wise. His lectures are rich with quotations and wonderful expressions. He has knowledge spanning various fields, both ancient and modern, Eastern and Western, and he can integrate Confucianism, Taoism, Buddhism, and other traditional Chinese cultures seamlessly. Moreover, Khenpo's mastery of the Chinese language is truly consummate. Of course, we look forward even more to what Khenpo brings us beyond the language, more wisdom and inspiration for our hearts and minds. After this lengthy introduction of mine, please join me in giving sincere and warm applause to welcome Khenpo Sodargye Rinpoche.
So today here at Peking University's School of Education, the main participants are our teachers and students, and also some students from other schools gathering here to study today. The topic we will study together today is the growth of life and the perfection of life. We will mainly study together around this topic. As for me personally, I've been to Peking University several times now. And each time I feel that when I explore various issues with many students and teachers, when we discuss together, I discover that your talent, wisdom, and compassion are all quite brilliant. At such times, for me personally, it's also a very good learning opportunity. Today, I wouldn't really call it giving you a lecture, but rather just discussing and sharing some of my own views on these issues. Each of you also has different perspectives, and you can also express your own opinions. I personally believe that in the growth and the perfection of our lives, what is most important? Today, I want to share with you 8 words. Which 8 words? Kindness, compassion, science, and goodwill treatment. Roughly these 8 words. What is kindness? Actually, all of us here know this. A kind heart is the basic principle of being a person and having morality. My teacher, whom you may have heard of, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche, in today's era, he was a great religious figure who made tremendous contributions to the propagation of the Dharma. He not only mastered the very profound domains of religion, but more importantly, he kept pace with the times. He understood many philosophies of our life. So for me personally, having everything I have today comes from him. He once said, the foundation of one's growth and perfection as a person is to have a kind heart and virtuous conduct. These two are the basic foundation of being a person. So I hope all of us here today will think about this. Virtuous character and a kind heart. We all can talk about these things, but actually when each of us reflects on ourselves and examines ourselves, am I a kind person or a person with an evil heart? At this time, it's easy to discover that in many ways we have some bad habits and tendencies. So I think all of us here, perhaps in terms of having a kind heart at present, in our education and in the content of the textbooks we study, is there much knowledge that can perfect ourselves? Of course, there isn't much, though there is a portion, especially what we now particularly need to learn is like what's taught in Tibetan Buddhism about compassionate bodhicitta. Of course, Chinese Buddhism and others also teach it, but in Tibetan Buddhism it's explained in great detail. To discipline ourselves and measure ourselves with such a mind, indeed, this is relatively lacking in current teaching and education. At this time, many of us young people here need to study this. In traditional Chinese culture, it's mainly about self-cultivation. From beginning to end, the traditional culture is primarily focused on self-cultivation. In much of Western culture, when self-cultivation and perfection reach a certain point, you can integrate the wisdom and domains of others. In Buddhism, it's not only about self-perfection, but also about helping others, benefiting others, and unconditional dedication. And I feel this is something that's very hard to obtain in much of today's knowledge. As for our kind hearts, it's not that they come just by thinking about it. It's not such a simple cause and condition. We should be able to obtain this through certain education and practice. From childhood, whether through family education, school education, or social education, in every aspect of our lives, we should transmit the power of goodness. If we transmit the power of goodness, actually human beings have this seed within them. In the beginning, human nature is good, as traditional culture also teaches. In our Buddhism, every sentient being has Buddha nature. And what is Buddha nature? It's actually the ultimate power of goodness, which we call Buddha nature. We must transmit the power of goodness from childhood. In today's terms, it's called positive energy, right? As I just said, a kind heart really does need to be cultivated from childhood, but now we have a problem. In many schools, including elementary schools and kindergartens, we cultivate a spirit of confrontation. The power of goodness is very weak. I once saw an expert who, when conducting an investigation, specifically asked some students he once deliberately went to observe. He said, "There are many students outside wearing very thin clothing. Could you lend them your extra clothes? Otherwise, might they freeze to death?" Most of the children said if they freeze, they deserve it. It doesn't matter. Many parents also, what kind of message do they transmit to their children from childhood? If someone bullies you in the learning process, you should hit them, you should hate them to death, bite them. If that doesn't work, you can beat them up. They frequently transmit this kind of message. Even when we see a beggar on the street, they say, "That's a fraud, we shouldn't give to them." If from childhood we transmit such negative messages to others, when they grow up, they will have a defensive mentality. And then in life, no matter what circumstances they encounter, they'll use a negative mind or a resistant mind. If from childhood we transform this into a different philosophy, then it wouldn't be like this. So I really hope that throughout history in this world, there have been many stories of goodness, which are very important. Like the famous Victor Hugo, he also said that kindness is actually the rarest pearl in the history of the world. It can emit light, and this light can illuminate the world. So many of us should think, what is so-called kindness? Actually, from the Buddhist perspective, a good heart finds a good world, an evil heart finds an evil world. As long as the mind is good, in the future, everything will lead to happiness. This is very important. Perhaps some people think, see, so-and-so does good deeds but often doesn't get rewarded, while so-and-so commits all kinds of evil. Why is he so happy? Actually, their power of goodness is very weak. But if their power of goodness were very strong, they should receive happy rewards either in this life or the next. Like before, many of you should understand this during the Second World War. Eisenhower, he was the 34th president of the United States. At that time, Eisenhower was the supreme commander of the Allied forces in Europe. Once he was in another French city and then needed to return to headquarters for an emergency meeting. On the way, he discovered an elderly couple in the snow. Their car had broken down and they were helpless. At that moment, he immediately asked the driver to stop, and one of his interpreters said, "Our situation is very urgent. We can't stop. This matter can be handled by the local police." But Eisenhower said, We can't wait. If we wait for the police to come and handle this matter, perhaps these two people will have already frozen to death. We can't do this. So the car stopped. It turned out these two elderly people were going to Paris to see their child, and indeed their car had broken down midway, leaving them with no options. He immediately had the two of them get in his car, and he took them to Paris. As a result, if he hadn't taken them to Paris that day, Eisenhower would have. The German Nazis, the enemy, had already ambushed on the roadside on his necessary route, preparing to kill him. If he hadn't changed his route at that time, he would have died on the spot. In that case, Hitler would have been victorious, and the entire history of World War II would have been rewritten. So what does this show? First, his kind heart not only protected these two people, but more importantly, it protected himself. Gradually, World War II ended as it did. This is the power of a kind heart. Perhaps people who don't understand this logic, who don't understand the science of mind, will think it's something marvelous or a legend, but actually it's really not like that. Similar things have happened in India before, and they're also in related historical records. I think many of you here may have seen this. There were two children who once, while begging outside, both saw many bald-headed monastics. One child said, "If I had the power, I would kill all these monks." The other, who had a kind heart, said, "If I have the opportunity in the future, I want to make offerings to them. If I become a king, I plan to make offerings to them." Indeed, later the one who generated the evil thought through other circumstances was run over by a cart and died. And the one who generated the kind thought later, indeed, through his aspiration and other circumstances, had his wish fulfilled and became a king. All of us here in a scientific institution like Peking University, many students, some have faith, some don't. But regardless, I want to tell you very clearly here today that the power of faith is not something that can be changed by a few individuals among us. You should also remember clearly what Napoleon once said. And we think that faith is mostly superstition. This itself also is a kind of superstition. After World War II, whether in terms of technology or economy, the center of the world, which is highly developed, we have to admit, is the United States. But in terms of the views of the American people as a whole, their perspective is completely opposite. They believe that people without faith are of low quality and have mental problems. But many people here think that people with faith seem to have mental problems. They pay attention to whether this person has faith or not. It's entirely a difference, East versus West. I've also been to many schools, their philosophies, and many of our philosophies are completely opposite. Who is right and who is wrong? I especially hope that many of you young students here will observe with impartial wisdom. You cannot think that when you see or hear about religious figures or religious teachings, you should sneer at them and dismiss them with disdain. This is not necessarily scientific. So I say a kind heart. Actually, in ancient literature, there are some very powerful case studies. These cases are very much worth our research and exploration. After this, perhaps in your life, in your daily living, there will be many unimaginable real benefits. This is one thing. There's another thing. There's also this saying about a kind heart. Everyone knows the Sahara Desert. It's the world's largest desert. This desert was previously called by people the Sea of Death because archaeologists who went there basically went and never returned. But in 1814, there was a team of archaeologists who had already completed all their archaeological work and returned in triumph. What was the reason? At that time, when they went to this desert, because the desert, perhaps you've also seen in various materials, is very, very large. The entire desert's area is like the entire territory of the United States. When going, this captain had a kind of compassion, a kind of love, because on the earth of this desert, there were many skeletal remains of dead people on top. According to Tibetan custom, it's also like this. Han regions may also have this custom. At that time, Westerners also had this custom. They couldn't bear to have these skeletal remains lying on top, so along the way, they buried them all in the desert. And after burying each corpse, they erected a tombstone going like this. Below, many team members started complaining to him, "We should be doing archaeology, not archaeology. We're wasting so much time here." Very unreasonable. After a week, they arrived at their destination. There, they discovered some very shocking, very precious archaeological materials of humanity. After obtaining many things, when returning with a full load, a sandstorm appeared and the entire world changed. Probably all big desert lands have this characteristic. The entire world becomes impossible. At that time, their compass had also failed. There was no way. Most people discovered at that time, oh, we truly will lose our lives in this desert this time. This captain said, we had some markers when we came. There should be no problem. At that time, when they went over, they generated compassion for these deceased, thinking they were our colleagues, and erected monuments out of compassion for them. But when returning, these became their markers. After they returned, when the Times interviewed them, they said, in the desert, actually, we could return through the markers. In the desert of our lives, actually, kindness is also a kind of marker. I think among those present, perhaps some people have lost their way. On the surface, everyone present appears very successful. We can say this, but actually, each of us has pressure, has suffering, has troubles, has worries, various kinds of life. We must face all sorts of matters. At this time, we very much need inner strength, inner positive energy. So-called positive energy, I believe, is goodness. So-called goodness means bringing happiness to oneself and others. Not only bringing happiness in this life, but also bringing happiness in the next life. This is true goodness. Very regrettably, many people don't understand. They think people only have this one life. People only need to care for themselves. Besides this, they seem not to think about helping others. This point is what many people most lack in their lives now. This point may need repeated reflection. This is the kindness I wanted to talk about. Indeed, if our hearts are kind, no matter at any time, any place, doing any matter, we won't have so many complaints, won't have so much sadness. Oneself has a sense of security about oneself or a sense of happiness. This point is very important. Some students present, perhaps in a certain sense, you came to Peking University. Just now I asked some teachers, they said here is different from other schools. There isn't too much employment pressure. I've been to many schools. Students at many schools say employment pressure is too great. There are several pressures: family pressure, emotional pressure, employment pressure, and so on. But here, employment pressure may not be very great. But what pressure is there? There are still many desires, because after you graduate from here, you feel, I'm going into society. You set your requirements for yourself, many of your goals, very high. When your goals get higher and higher, a person's energy and merit certainly have limits. It's like athletes too. When the high jump standard line gets higher and higher, their physical strength can't keep up. So if each of you sets your goals a bit lower, probably in any matter, it won't necessarily be so painful. But I think people present your goals are certainly very high. After graduating from school, whether it's your wages or salary, goals in all aspects won't be set very low. Perhaps when you first got into such a university, you were very elated and happy. But after arriving here, you're also not necessarily very happy, because I see the smiles on students' faces inside are also not that great. So I think if there's a truly kind heart, at any time, anywhere, one will smile. At any time, anywhere, one will speak some kind words. In the heart, kind thoughts will also arise, and behavior can also do some kind deeds. This is a very important matter for us. Also, I thought of something discussed in Buddhism. There's a compassionate heart. People present may also be clear about this. In our worldly life, there's also sympathy or loving heart. But this kind of love and the love discussed in Buddhism are indeed different. I hope those present will also observe. Why are they different? What's discussed in Buddhism, people often say, is a kind of great love without boundaries. Why is it called great love without boundaries? Buddhism has different levels, including the level of Theravada Buddhism, also the level of Mahayana Buddhism, and different, even higher levels. If we place it at a relatively high level, the level of Mahayana Buddhism, this loving heart, this compassionate heart, is not only love for one's own friends and relatives, but even for enemies who often harm oneself, who resent oneself, one also loves them. This may be very difficult for many people to do. Even some religions, this loving heart is only for people of one's own religion. Besides this, For heretics, if their behavior is unreasonable, they can slaughter them, can assassinate them. But the Mahayana compassionate heart of Buddhism, even toward resented enemies, heretics, and many other sentient beings and lives, treats them equally, loves others as one loves oneself. Such love, I think in the thinking of many people now, is indeed very difficult to obtain. Just like Schopenhauer once said in his philosophy, he said human morality is divided into three minds, three motivations. One mind hopes for one's own happiness. Another mind hopes for others' suffering. Another mind hopes for others' happiness. There are three minds. Among these three minds, hoping for one's own happiness and hoping for others' suffering, if measured according to mental science, psychology, with a relatively higher concept. These two kinds of minds are actually called selfish minds, mediocre minds. They are not the foundation of lofty morality. What is the foundation of lofty morality? It's the mind that hopes for others' happiness. This is Schopenhauer's relatively high-level theory. In such theory, actually in Buddhism, we also discuss the selfish mind. This is a kind of binding mind, a mind like poison. In the end, truly loving all sentient beings, loving all people, this mind is the highest. I think many people, everyone should think about this. Our society needs loving hearts. Indeed, it needs loving hearts. The reason for lacking loving hearts is that everyone thinks only of themselves. Everyone has a selfish mentality. Driven and motivated by a selfish mentality, the things done are all selfish matters. Now everyone knows in our society, including much food, poisonous milk powder, gutter oil, and so on. Actually, these should be caused by selfish minds. When we eat now, too, I often think, is there gutter oil here? Can this be eaten? Are there any other hormones inside? Even when eating, it's with trepidation. No matter at any time, everyone has a kind of very worried mind. What's the reason? Many people now haven't cultivated the mind of loving others. Actually, true education, lofty education, should be teaching others to cultivate the mind of benefiting others. This mind of benefiting others doesn't only benefit the scope around oneself. Previously, Gordon had a book called The Learning Revolution. This Gordon is not the person who burned the old summer palace before, but another New Zealand writer. He wrote something like this. In it, he says, the realm of the highest education should have three kinds of harmony. The first harmony is the harmony of one's own life itself. The second is harmony with surrounding life. The third is harmony with nature. Now, if we truly want to embody and construct a harmonious society, just speaking verbally won't work. Just writing in words won't work. Actually, we must have genuine behavior to do it. First, each person in their heart must understand its meaning and value. For a person themselves to be harmonious, first adjust your mind. If all day long the mind is very troubled, now many university students have a verbal habit. So annoying, so painful, so sad. Is it real or fake? There are many such verbal habits, but among verbal habits, the relatively positive ones, such as gratitude, happiness, well-being, these are very few. Many people are all like, "I are so sad, so troublesome, so much pressure." A while ago, I spoke at another school. I said the ancients didn't have the word pressure. In our Tibetan language, until now, many Tibetans don't know the word pressure. In our cities, everyone says, so much pressure. Many adults, some mature people, buying a house, buying a car, paying debts, raising children, children attending university, so much pressure, not enough time. Many university students think, study is so stressful, no money, need to go online, can't sleep, and so on. There's much, much pressure. Actually, pressure is created by ourselves. We should say it like this. Until now, in the places where I am, when I mention pressure, probably younger Tibetans in cities know, but generally, those living in relatively remote areas, but they're very happy. They don't necessarily possess much wealth. Actually, pressure isn't necessarily very great. So I think now we first perfect ourselves, first adjust people's minds. Actually, our human minds can be gradually tamed. Buddhist sutras say, purify one's own mind. That is, purifying our human hearts. This is a person who truly has wisdom. Otherwise, if we don't purify ourselves and all day think only of ourselves, harming others, in current society, every day there's so much information transmitting negative facts. At this time, many of us will learn them. After learning, in actual action, we'll also do them. So-called loving heart, altruistic heart, bodhicitta, very difficult to generate. So I especially hope everyone, from the perspective of altruism or observing some meanings in Buddhist studies. The third level of meaning I want to discuss is science. Our era is actually an era that greatly venerates science. Personally, I'm very interested in genuine science. From Buddhist language, I also have great confidence in science. Indeed, science of these several hundred years has changed much of our society. We must admit now, whether it's transportation or information, much convenience in society is brought by science. But we also must admit, through science, humanity's anxiety, diseases, pressure, harm, warfare. These are also all brought through science. Moreover, the negative effects and power brought by science are also unimaginable. In the past, when fighting wars, there was only killing each other between people with knives, spears, and guns. But now, fighting wars, fortunately, recently, there hasn't been any great warfare. At the mention of war, various countries have already prepared all kinds of very frightening nuclear weapons. It's said nuclear weapons should be controlled, but actually everyone should be clear. Small countries have small nuclear weapons, large countries have large nuclear weapons. They've all already fixed their gaze, aimed well. At which country, which city, they've mutually already aimed well. If by chance one person is unhappy in their heart, like Hitler in the past, if one such person appears with one command, perhaps World War II won't count as anything. Now it's become like this. This is also brought by science. This harmfulness, this sense of dread, everyone must admit. At the time when Japan's earthquake occurred, the side effects of the nuclear power plant, everyone has a sense of what kind of fear it brought to the entire globe. So I'm thinking, on one hand, we should also have a sense of reverence towards science, but on the other hand, what I'm telling everyone today here is about our growth. Actually, what I want to say today is that as a Buddhist, much knowledge in Buddhism should be said to be very advanced, higher science. Why do I say this? We've always believed science can be divided into natural science, spiritual science, and social science. In terms of natural science, it can actually be said to be Western civilization. Aristotle, Plato, ancient Greek philosophy, that's when it appeared. Our human society, human science, from this aspect we can say China's way of Confucius, Mencius, Laozi and Zhuangzi expounded very well on human conduct in this present world. Spiritual science, mainly from India's Buddha Shakyamuni, transmitted to the present. On this point you may feel that what people like us, Buddhists, say you may not necessarily accept. But actually, indeed, scientists also acknowledge it. Yesterday, I had a mutual visit with Zhu Qingxi, the former president of University of Science and Technology of China. He already served as president at the University of Science and Technology for 10 years. We had a mutual visit. During the visit, I specifically asked him, as a scientist, and he's also a very famous Chinese chemist, also a very renowned academician, among the first batch to successfully research Chinese physics, chemistry, and quantum mechanics, among the first batch to go to America to study. Previously, in the proceedings of the Second World Buddhist Forum, there's an article called Physics Enters the Realm of Chan, Dependent Origination and Emptiness. At the end of this article, there's a very interesting sentence. He said, when scientists arduously reach the mountaintop, Buddhist masters have been waiting there for a long time. There's such a sentence. I said, as a scientist, under what circumstances did you begin to speak such a conclusion? Actually, this sentence is of great interest to current academic and cultural circles. I also wanted to understand, he's been a scientist for many years and finally said that scientists, after arduously researching and experimenting when reaching the mountaintop, the Buddha more than 2,500 years ago had already long been waiting on the mountaintop. Why do you make such a judgment about Eastern culture? At this time, he said, after years of research, whether it's quantum mechanics or chemistry's most ultimate viewpoint, actually Buddha Shakyamuni had already in the Shurangama Sutra and Lankavatara Sutra, as well as in his disciples, including the Yoga Karabhumi Shastra and Vijñapti Matrata Siddhi, in these treatises already explained it very, very clearly. So now, many scientists greatly revere this. Therefore, I also especially hope many young people won't regard Buddhism, religion, as, this is superstition, and strike it down with one blow, as if catching everything in one net. This is superstition. I think such a statement is unreasonable. If it were superstition in Buddhism too, Buddha Shakyamuni said, including my words, you should by every means, many times, just like refining pure gold, observe. After observing, if it's reasonable, you can accept it. If unreasonable, you can discard it. You shouldn't accept my words, accept my doctrine because of faith in me. I think this sentence for many scientists now should be the fairest, most reasonable, most objective. Science often speaks of objective observation. Actually, much current scientific observation, including some of our religious views, some Marxist viewpoints from the 19th century, early 20th century, these have all along not been reformed. Without reform, much behavior from the 19th century has changed. Whether it's the instruments we use, people's thinking and mentality at that time, including quantum mechanics, at that time in the 19th century, in Marx's era, indeed current quantum mechanics and so on, so many ever-changing changes in the world were not discovered. If they appeared in the current era, our thinking, they wouldn't judge like this. Therefore, some of our mentalities and consciousnesses, I also especially hope many scholars will have a mind that keeps pace with the times. Some viewpoints of our current science are worth reconsidering, especially regarding the spiritual aspect, as I just said, in the process of discussing with Professor Zhu. Actually, you all should also. For scientists like him, there are also some introductions online, including that he went to study Buddhism with teacher Nan Huaijin for close to over 10 years. Some of us now, not to mention the president of a University of Science and Technology, some middle school principals, ordinary university professors, homeroom teachers, are very afraid of being infected by superstition. Actually, if you truly receive Buddhism's compassion and wisdom, you don't need to be so afraid. It won't infect you, anesthetize you, or intoxicate you. From then on, you have no feelings toward life, family, anything. Just like poison eaten now, it won't be like that. If you truly understand some concepts of wisdom and compassion in Buddhism, you'll have even newer understanding of life and living. I especially hope we humans should live in truth. We should be very transparent, meaningful, reasonable, objective thinkers. Never use the guise of science, use the outer garment of objectivity to cope with or betray some reasonable religion, any reasonable faith. I think this is unscientific. Science also has unscientific aspects, also has some pseudoscience. On this issue, we especially hope from quantum mechanics, psychology, from the entire macroscopic world and microscopic world, this knowledge in all these aspects. How is it judged in Buddhism? I won't mention other religions. I'll only mention Buddhism. In Buddhism, originally, more than 2,500 years ago, how was it analyzed? Just now, the conclusions we obtained through various experiments, Buddhist masters originally indeed already obtained through realization. On this point, many of us also need to understand. This is one point I wanted to mention. Also, finally, I'll say one more thing. In our daily life, we must treat ourselves well and treat others well. Why do I say this? Actually, people present should all be said to be people with ideals, people with wisdom, people with capability. Although there's capability, if our own ideals aren't developed, aren't established in some good aspects, it's very possible your life is only this. Therefore, people often in their life's goals should have the best lofty thoughts. This is very important. Any scientist and thinker is also like this. Some of our students now, after graduation, what will you do? I'll become a civil servant. I'll become a company CEO. Make more and more money and make family more and more happy. Everything revolves around oneself, not thinking, how will I contribute to humanity? How will I do academic research? How will this research change the destiny of the entire society, humanity's destiny? From the larger aspect, many people won't think. This is a current social phenomenon. Actually, this isn't very good. There should be some good, lofty ideas. Previously at Harvard University, there was once a 20-year follow-up experiment on 300 students. At the beginning, when observing these over 300 students, 15 people had very good ideals. After 20 years, when observing, these 15 people's wealth far exceeded the sum of the wealth of the other 85% of people. Actually, sometimes we humans, truly acting from the larger aspect, then think, in Buddhism we say, great aspiration, great power. What does it mean? If your aspiration is very great, everyone has a kind of power. Actually, in the human mind, whether wisdom, capability, or compassion, there's much, much potential. In life, what's used doesn't even reach 10%. Just like what's discussed in Buddhism, alaya vijnana. Alaya is called tathagata garbha. Inside are stored many, many treasures, but we only use a selfish portion. I serve my family, I serve myself. If you dig out only such a small thing, then you can only use this bit. If you think, in my mentality, there's more, higher wisdom, I must do this cause and condition prompts, and can let your mind's power infinitely expand. This is the most important method of success. So at any time, we cannot give up. This is very important. In Buddhism, it's also like this. Buddhism's ideal is incomparable with others. For example, in Mahayana Buddhism, I want to liberate all boundless sentient beings in the world. I myself must first manifest Buddhahood. I want to realize the truth of all phenomena in the universe. This is called becoming a Buddha. After becoming a Buddha, what to do? Does the Buddha have any work? Does he need to go to work every day? No need. What is the Buddha's work? It's benefiting sentient beings. What does the Buddha truly do after becoming a Buddha? It's benefiting sentient beings, expounding truth to sentient beings. This is the Buddha's aspiration. If we generate such a mind, I want to realize all worldly truths. After realizing worldly truths, I want to transmit this truth to all people. Such an idea, whether our teachers or students, I think your Peking University School of Education, it should be said, is a place many people greatly envy. Our minds should continuously expand. If they don't continuously expand, I think throughout human history, everything is destroyed by selfishness. Selfishness brings us a kind of worry, brings us a kind of suffering, brings disaster, brings unhappiness. Actually, a truly altruistic mind brings us sunshine and beauty. So in the process of what you do, don't have any retreat, shrinking back, cowardice. It's impossible for things to go smoothly forever. After all, there will be bumpy, winding roads. This is a pattern of life, but at this time you cannot give up. In Buddhism, we say Buddha means one who has realized. What is a bodhisattva? So-called bodhisattva is very brave in helping others. Bodhisattva means brave warrior. Warriors are very brave. No matter what you encounter, now, many people's psychology is very fragile, including some young people in emotions encountering a little bit, immediately start thinking of suicide as if life already has no more hope. Or some successful people in career, in work, when encountering some difficulties, immediately feel about everything that it's dim and lightless. Actually, it's also not like this. Any successful person in the process also has many hardships. Previously, Churchill said his life's success secrets are only 3. What are the 3? The first is never give up. What's the second secret? Never, never give up. What's the third secret? Never, never, never give up. The meaning is don't give up. What is not giving up? In our lives, when we truly encounter a little hardship, obstacles, we must bravely face them, driven by love, treating all people well. Actually, the world will bring you a kind of blessing. I actually especially like a song. I don't sing well, but the lyrics say, under heaven, there's no one I don't love. Under heaven, there's no one I don't trust. Under heaven, there's no one I don't forgive. After that, it also says, long-lasting great love pervades the void forever without end. They often sing songs like this. These lyrics, indeed, in our worldly life, if we can finally generate the aspiration, all sentient beings under heaven, I love them all. Even resented enemies, I also treat them with loving heart. To have such a state in our worldly life, we should all trust, all forgive, all use a kind of love and compassion to embrace the world. Using altruism to help all life, I think we'll have everywhere a kind of happiness, a kind of warm sunshine, not bringing worry and darkness. Therefore, I especially hope we use wisdom, compassion, science, use good treatment to treat and perfect our own lives. This is some simple words I wanted to say to everyone today. Thank you all.